Hey everyone, I'm sitting on the floor today because I want to give a little intro to a video talking about this treadle behind me. In this video, I tried my best to take little snippets of everything that I did so I could explain how I put this treadle together behind me. I didn't go over the paint job, but I spray painted. I took the treadle apart into different pieces and I spray painted it clearly pink and green, as you can see. But what I am going to cover in this is how to put the treadle back together. This little part right here and right here is an extension. This is actually a domestic treadle, and a domestic treadle is generally not wide enough to put an industrial machine in. So I actually figured out a way to put in these two extension pipes and extend the width of the treadle so that it could be used with an industrial machine. And in this case, I actually made it a very specific width so that I would have just enough room for my drawers, leg, machine, leg, and motor controller over here. And the tabletop is actually the wood part, is a recycled dining room table, and it's 37.5 inches wide, which is pretty small. It's on the small side. A better width would be 39 to 40 inches, so your projects don't flop off the left side. But anyway, in this video, I'm going to try to show you close-ups of how I put the whole entire table together, attaching the legs. There's also a, you can see right here, there's a little extension. I think it was like 3¼ inches where I actually raised and extended the height of the table. So that helps you get your hand under to grab the handle while your knees are under the table as well. So I hope you'll find this interesting. It's not professionally done. I built this in my basement, and my basement's kind of a mess. I think I've caused most of the mess down there, but in any case, I just try to really show you my steps and the things that I did, because I've installed fasteners in the tabletop for both the motor and the legs that have no hardware on top of the wood. So your wood looks really nice without any hardware on top. So that's mostly what this video is about. It's about putting the table together, how to get the hardware installed, little snippets of all the different parts and things that I did to get this table together. There's going to be another video after this one showing how to put the servo motor together. Okay, but I'm going to make that a separate video. All right, so I hope this helps some of you guys. Okay, thanks for watching. So I'm just starting my table layout here. I've got my piece of wood that I have finished putting 3 coats of polyurethane on, and I've got some drawers that are going to go on the side, and then I have put blue tape where I think my stretched domestic treadle legs are going to go. And so I did some figuring, and I figure that the controller is going to go on the right hand side, and the servo motor controller is about 3 inches wide. So I'm leaving room between the edge of the table and the legs, and then another 1.75 inches between the legs and the center line of the belt. And then I've calculated that I need 6 inches from the other edge. So I've tried to put the black mark on the tape as the center line of the legs, and then the black mark on this tape is the center line of the other legs, and measure across. But I'm going to do a little test fitting now. The domestic treadle legs are skinnier than an industrial set of treadle legs, so the domestic don't take up as much room. So I've got my my 3 drawers now sitting on top of my table. They will be on the underside, but I wanted to see how much edge I have, and it looks like my leg may need to go over a little bit. I think to me it just feels a little too close to the edge, so I'm going to move my blue tape over. So I've moved my blue tape over a little bit. The blue tape is about as wide as a treadle leg, so I'm going to make sure that I have enough room on the side of the drawers and a little bit of room on this side of the table so that when the drawers are underneath, they're just not right up against the edge. So now I'm going to measure the distance between my two tapes, and the belt guard on your servo, it sticks out a little beyond where the belt actually sits on the pulley. So you need a little bit of space here between the leg and the belt so that your belt guard isn't hitting your leg. Ask me how I know, haha. So I'm now going to measure in between the center line of this blue tape and the center line of that blue tape, and that's going to tell me how much I need to stretch my treadle. This is for a universal feed embroidery machine. It's specifically shaped for a Cornelli. That's why this cutout is here for the handle underneath. But if you're doing a regular industrial sewing machine, sort of the same principles apply. The needle of my machine is about here. So I want to make sure I have enough space in between here and the table leg to kind of get my knees under the table so I sit square at the table. This particular table is a very tiny table. It's a little smaller than normal. It's 37.5 inches wide, and it's a little shorter than adequate. Usually I don't like my tables to be shorter than 39 or like 40 inches, but I'm trying to shoehorn another table into my arts and crafts room. So I'm gonna sort of pretend like my knees are sitting here at the needle area and make sure that I have enough space for my legs to get under the treadle legs. And then I'm gonna go and cut some extension pipes to stretch the treadle and spray paint those green as well. So I had to do a little bit of math right here. I maybe didn't have to do this math. I'm going to show you two ways to do this. So I know that my first leg is over here and my second leg is over there, and I measured the distance. That's the spacing that I want to create by stretching my domestic treadle legs. So that distance from this, which is outside of the servo motor area, and that which gives me room for my drawers, is the distance that I want. I want the center line of my legs to be 25.75, which is 25 3/4 or 25 6/8. Okay, so I'm doing some math here. So that's what I want. So I need to figure out how much is the extension that I have to put on. So I did it here on the paper with some math. The leg width, the total width of a leg is 3/4. Okay, so I got two legs at 3/4, and the center piece from the domestic treadle is 21 5/8. So I need to know from the center line to the center line. So 1/2 of 3/4 is 6/8. So I know that I have from the center of this 6/8, then I have 21 5/8 over and another 6/8. So half of 6/8, which is 3/4, 1/2 is 3/8, plus 3/8 plus 21 5/8 gives me the distance from the center line to the center line. So 21 5/8 equals, 3/8 plus 3/8 plus 21 5/8 equals 21 11/8, which is 22 3/8. And then I need to figure out what is the length of my extension pipe. So 25 3/4, which happens to be 25 6/8, minus 22 3/8 is 3 3/8. So I should need to extend my things by 3 3/8. Okay, that's the hard way to do this math. The easy way to do it is for me to go from the blue tape that I want. So the easy way to do it is to know what is the length of your overall treadle, and then mark it on your thing, and then just measure the difference between where your treadle ends up and where you want to go, and that's the length of the pipe you got to cut. Okay, so there's kind of two ways. I usually do it on paper, and then I sort of double check myself in the real world. So now I have marked my pipe with a Sharpie, and I'm using a pipe cutting tool. I'm using the bigger one. They come in, you can get little ones, and you can get very, very tiny pipe cutting tools. I'm using the pipe cutting tool because it tends to cut a perpendicular cut and not be crooked. If you don't have a pipe cutting tool, you can use a hacksaw and a vise, but I find that the pipe cutting tool is very simple to use. You just keep tightening this and rotate it around the pipe, and it gives you a nice cut. So I'm going to cut 2 pieces that are 3 3/8 inches long. Okay. So now I got my 2 pieces of pipe that are 3 3/8 inch long. I'm going to sand these and go out and prime and paint these green. Okay, so I've cut my 2 treadle stretch extensions here, and I have also cut 4 short pieces because I'm going to actually raise my tabletop. This is a 5/16 inch bolt, which I'll be stretching the treadle with these pieces, and then these 4 I'm going to insert into my tabletop using these nut or thread inserts. I don't know what you call them, knife certs, nut certs, something, which are these easy lock things. And what you do is you drill a big hole in your table, you screw this in using this locked bolts, and then you put your threaded rod into that hole, and then that threaded rod goes through this and it will extend my tabletop, making it a taller height. So I'm going to go spray paint. I'm going to prime these and spray paint all these. I have sanded them already with some 220 grit. I'm going to spray paint these green, and these are going to get spray painted pink. And then I'm going to try to put my legs together using this and sort out on the table where the holes go to attach the legs. And then I'm going to put these nut certs in so that when I put my tabletop together, you won't see any hardware on the top of the table. Okay, so I'm going to go spray paint. Okay, so I have my trusty helper Desmo here. I have just spray painted the little things with primer, and I'm now going to paint them pink and green. They're hanging out in the sun so they can dry. And I got my trusty helper Desmo here with me. Okay, so I just painted the little pieces pink and green, and if you get any drips or whatever, don't worry about it because no one's going to see it. They're going to be up under the table and you're not necessarily going to see it. I'm going to leave these out in the sun to dry for a little bit. Right, Desmo? You a good boy, huh? Are you a good boy? So in this case, I have decided I'm going to extend my treadle on the right side so the pedal moves to the left. I mean, technically I guess this side moves out, but that keeps the pedal as far to the left as possible. I've removed the treadle wheel. I know I'm not going to be using the treadle wheel. In some of my other videos, I talk about stretching the left side so the treadle wheel stays to the right, and you could potentially still use it as a driving wheel for your machine. But in this case, I'm putting on a servo, so I'm going to stretch the right side so my pedal and feet are more to the left, which should be more in line with my center of my needle for sewing, so my spine and back and head and everything can be more aligned. So I've gone ahead and I've put the original attaching screws back in and secured the top and the bottom with the original attaching screws. And now I'm going to prepare the right side with my pipe extensions and threaded rods. I will be using a 5/16 bolt that I'm going to have to cut to the right length after I fit it together. Okay, so now I've got my other leg. This is basically how it's going to go, and I've just threaded my 5/16 inch bolt through this, and I've put a lock washer and a nut on. So I'm going to measure how much of this bolt I'm going to hacksaw off, and so I'm just going to go like this and measure, and I'm going to cut this part off with my hacksaw, and then when I put it through the treadle, the pipe, the other part of the treadle lock washer nut, it should fit, and there shouldn't be much of a bolt sticking out here. So I'm going to hacksaw the 2 bolts off now. Okay, and here I am hacksawing off my bolt. So the strength of this extension is here. I have the bolt head starting here, okay, and I have one bolt here which I've snugged up using 2 crescent wrenches. So this bolt is snugged up against the treadle and the head on this side. So I've put a crescent wrench on each side and I've made those very tight. Then you're going to have a bolt on the other side, and then you're going to have a lock washer and a bolt. And that is basically how you can stretch your treadle and have it strong. Okay, so I'm going to do this on the top and the bottom, but the only difference is I'm going to thread my pipe onto here so you don't see these 2 nuts, and it will look like it's in my green pipe. But this is the setup: nut, lock washer, nut, nut, bolt head. That's how you get it to be strong. So I've got my pipe on, and then I screwed my nut till it's just into the pipe, and now I'm going to put my treadle part on and then lock washer and the nut on the other side. So that's what I've done so far. So I've got it all together now, and I've got my extension pipes in. It is very sturdy. As you can tell, I have tried to paint it nicely so the green extensions should match with the rest of it. And I did accidentally nick my paint with the crescent wrench, but that's okay because I'll show you how to touch that up, as well as paint this bolt and the end of the nut green so we don't see that later, and it'll all blend in seamlessly. But as you can tell, it's held together. The lock washer's clamped down, and this, I don't know if you can see it because it's the same color, but this pipe here is, you can see there's a little chip on the end. It's free to rotate. So this pipe is not actually holding it together. It's being held by the bolt and the nuts, which gives it the strength. So now I'm going to try to fit this onto my table, and we'll see if I got it the right size. Okay, so I just set it on upside down. It would, of course, be underneath, but it looks like I have my legs lined up right over where my tape is. And then this was my measurement to the extension, and my legs are over here right where my tape for the legs were. My drawers are going to fit nicely there, and I have enough room between the belt and the treadle for the servo motor to be back there, and the servo motor controller will be up front. So I'm pretty happy with that. Now I've got to turn the table upside down, mark where the legs are going to go in the bottom of the table, figure out, the front to back configuration. And I usually try to make kind of like the center of the legs sort of to the centroid of the weight of the machine, and at least so that the weight of the machine is definitely within the envelope of the legs for sure, so that you don't have the table tipping over. So I'm going to flip it around. I'm going to mark where these go, and I'm going to get ready to start installing my extensions. Pretty happy with this so far. It's going to look pretty cool. So my table, the overall width is 19 inches wide. I've now flipped my wood upside down. I put some towels on my sawhorses so I don't damage my fresh polyurethane on the other side, which is actually like 5 days old. And then I've gone and measured. So I got my treadle legs are extended, and I've got it up here. I've got my drawers, got a little bit of extra on the side for the drawers. I've got a little over 4 inches here to put the motor controller. And then over here, I have 2 inches between my treadle legs and the belt, the center of the belt. And then I've got it, I've measured 3 inches back from the edge, and over here I've got it 3 inches back from the edge, so hopefully it's sort of parallel. That leaves me on the back side with 4 inches, which is okay because the hole for the machine is actually towards the front of the table. So I want the legs more centered over where the weight of the machine is, but the legs flare out, so it goes forward. And so I'm just putting my legs a little forward, but not so far forward that I'm going to be banging my knees on them. So it's kind of, your own choice. I measured my machines upstairs, and most of them are a little bit wider table, and they're 3.5 inches back, but I'm going to be going with 3 inches back. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to mark the 4 holes where this goes, and normally you would just put a wood screw into that hole and screw these legs onto your table, but I'm going to be doing a height extension for this table. Okay, so what I'm doing now, I have my table upside down and I have marked where my holes go. And I'm using this thing, it's like a threaded insert. And it has threads on the inside and big threads on the outside. Okay, so you take this and let's start here. You drill a hole that's the size of the outside diameter of this, not the screw threads, but the diameter of the actual shaft. And then you drill that hole, okay? And then you screw this into the hole, and then you can put your threaded rod in there, and it's just a little more secure than trying to put a threaded rod into the wood, okay? Now how you get this in, a couple of ways you can do it. This is my preferred way. I have a 1/4 inch bolt here that I've threaded into the insert. Okay, you can see the bolt. And then you tighten 2 nuts together, and that's holding on the insert, okay? So the insert can come off, but these 2 nuts are locked together right here. This one is free to move, and then you've got the nut head. So you put your insert on this, and then you can start to insert it in, and you can I'm using a crescent wrench here to tighten the bolt head, and these 2 locked nuts will drive this insert into your wood. Or also, if you put this 3rd nut on, you can align the nut and the head up, and you can use a socket. And this 3rd nut here in the middle, it just keeps your socket perpendicular. You don't need that 3rd nut, but it just makes it easier so your socket doesn't kind of like bottom out on this bolt and then your socket goes crooked. So I'm going to put this into my hole in the wood and use my crescent wrench to screw it in, and you may have to unlock your lock washers to get your threaded rod back out. Over here I'm using a upcycled dining room table, and you can see my pen mark is right next to an old hole. So I took a small piece of this paint stirrer, like a shim, and I filled that little hole, okay, that was existing, so I can get my new hole where the pen mark is. Otherwise, if I try to drill it without filling the hole that was right next to it, my drill bit might just flop into that hole and I won't get my new hole in the right place. So I'm going to start my new hole with a smaller pilot drill to get my hole started, and then I'm going to come back with the drill that's sized for these inserts. And I put a piece of blue tape on my drill bit, so I will, I put a piece of blue tape on my drill bit, so it will only go so deep, so I won't come through the edge of my table. My table is 1 inch thick, and you can see this insert is much more shallow than the depth of my table, so I'm confident I can drill into my table, I can put my threaded rod in to extend, and it won't be showing out the top. And I'm going to use these types of things to mount the servo motor as well. That way my beautiful wood tabletop will not have any hardware showing from the top. But right now I'm working on the bottom to install my legs. So I got my 4 inserts in now. Here's an empty one. And this is my height extension cover pipe facade that's going to go there. And I went to Home Depot and I bought this threaded rod. It is a 1/4 inch by 36 inch threaded rod. So that means it's 1/4 inch diameter. and it fits into my things. So I have gone and hacksawed off some pieces of that 36-inch threaded rod, and what I'm gonna do, I have I measured, and I put a nut, a lock washer and a nut, and I tightened those up against the top, and then this water pipe just goes right over the top of that, and then I'll have a nut on the inside just to give it some stability so that the water pipe is secure and doesn't really move too much. And then I measured the treadle leg is 1/2 inch thick. So I'm in the process of measuring this one here. So I've got my threaded rod screwed in. I put my water pipe over, and then I'm measuring. I need 1/2 inch for my treadle base, and I need a 1/16 inch for a lock washer, and then that nut. So I need it to be 1 3/4 above the spacer, pink thing. So I've got it there. I'm gonna put a piece of blue tape around that, and then I'm gonna hacksaw that off. So I'm gonna put a piece of blue tape right here. Then I've got it marked. I can move my nut out of the way. I can unscrew my threaded rod from the table. And that was screwed in there. I just unscrewed it. Now I'm going to go hacksaw this off where the blue tape is using a hacksaw, and then I do use a bastard metal draw file to kind of smooth the end of my threaded rod so that you can get it to start easily. You can see on this one, I hacksawed it off, and then you just smooth the end of this so you can make sure the bolt starts. Okay, so here's my cut threaded rod, and I just screwed it in. I'm cutting each one individually so I can, I put the not very nicely smoothed end in. I'm going to turn it over because this end I filed fairly nicely because those are going to be sticking out on the bottom of the table. So I just screw that in. Oops. Then I have a lock washer. This is a split. Try to get that to focus. This is a split lock washer. It has a split in it. Okay. And when you clamp it down tight, there's a spring action there, and it locks the nut in place. So I'm going to put that on my threaded rod. So that's first, and that's going up against the table and the inserted metal part that I put in there first. Trying not to knock over my freshly painted extension. Then I'm going to put this nut on, and if I was smart, I would have put it on first so I didn't have to run it all the way down from the top down, but okay, so I got my nut down at the bottom, and I'm going to take my little crescent wrench, and I'm going to tighten, move this out of the way again so I don't mess that up. I'm going to just tighten my nut until I see that lock washer is tight, and it doesn't have to be like, you don't have to like crank on it like a mofo, but it's now tight. And then I'm going to put this on top, and then I'm going to take my nut for the inside. Let me get that started, and I'm going to put that down so it goes inside of the copper pipe, and so it's just level with the top of the copper pipe. Okay, then I'm going to put my treadle on and my nut on the other side. So I got to go cut one more threaded rod for the back, and then we'll be ready to put the treadle on. Again, using copper water pipe and 1/4 inch threaded rod. So now I have all my spacers in, all my threaded rods in. Oh, hi, Desmo. ready to put the treadle base on test fit. And then if it works, we can start to fit the servo motor. Okay, so I have just dropped the treadle base onto my 4 spacers. It should look fairly seamless, you know, when you see it from the front, because the pink legs are now continuous. And I am going to put a lock washer and a nut on that and tighten all the legs up. And then we'll move on to the servo motor. So this is what it looks like now. My threaded rod is sticking out, and I'm going to take a lock washer and I'm going to put it on that, and then I'm going to take a nut and I'm going to put it on that. And the treadle is a little uneven, so I'm just going to try to make sure that the split in the lock washer is sitting, you know, on kind of a flat spot. So I'll push it around to the side, and I'm going to put my nut on. Okay, so I got my nut on there, and I'm gonna tighten it up with my little crescent wrench, and then I'm gonna do the other 2, and my treadle base will be done. Got the height pretty good, so there's just a little bit of the bolt sticking out, or threaded rod. Okay, I'm gonna do the other ones, and we'll be done with the table. Okay, so here's how you do touch-up. You spray a little bit of spray paint in the center of that little cup, and you take a paintbrush and you get it on your paintbrush, and you just do some dabbing, do some touch-up. I'm gonna paint this bolt pink. Oh, sorry, you couldn't see. You're out of focus. This bolt may take 2 coats, but I'm gonna paint the bolt pink. And that's all you gotta do. Just touch it up with a brush and spray paint into the lid. Okay? Okay, so that's it for my table build, attaching the legs with my extension pipes. As you can see, that's all done. My nuts are touched up. Then I'm gonna mount my servo. So here's the servo, and I'm gonna start a separate video for that. But now you know how to do that, and I'm gonna put my drawers over here. Okay. So I'm back here to finish the table. I did install the servo motor, and I'm going to try to put that into a separate video about motors. So right now I just want to focus on finishing the legs. We got the legs attached to the base, and I attached these drawers, which are really kind of fiddly because you need a long screwdriver to get in the drawers to screw it into the top. But I always like to put drawers on my tables. And so now I'm going to go over how to put the foot pedal on. So the foot pedal, it rides on 2, like, I guess, sockets, one on each end, and they're held in by this part, which is also the same part which holds the wheel in here if I had the wheel. And it's this this pointy part, and it goes into that, it goes into this like socket, and then that allows it to rotate. So I'm going to put this foot pedal back into the base. So this is one of these parts. It looks like this, and I started screwing it in, and then I'm going to put the other one in from the other side and just hold the pedal in the area. Then I'm going to take this, which this is the original part. It unscrews. You can see there's like a bolt on the top and a bolt and a screw on the bottom, and it fits into the hole. So I'm going to use that. This is a ball joint. Some really old treadles actually have a wooden pitman arm, but this one is a little newer, so it has metal, but there's a ball joint there. So I'm going to use this for the bottom half, And then the top half, I'll use the rod that came with the servo to connect it to the motor. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in place and screw these in. And the way this works is the nut rotates around the screw. So you install it, and then you can screw the screw in closer until it's tight, until it's holding the pedal between the 2 points, but has room and play to rotate. And then you just put this lock washer tight against the treadle. So I'm going to do that now, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I now have my pedal in. I have tightened the things on both sides. It's a little tight, kind of a little, it's sticking, but I think that with just a little bit of use that will loosen up. And I did actually spray paint in the ball joints, so I could put like a drop of oil on that, but I'm not going to do that now because I'm considering this to be still fresh paint because it was painted last week. But I used a crescent wrench. Well, first I took my screwdriver and I tightened the screw, the pin screw, whatever you want to call it, and I took my crescent wrench and I tightened this to that. And this one over here, the threaded pin and the nut weren't loose, so I just snugged that one up. So now I'm ready to go, and I'm going to put this into the joint. Let me put you in the phone holder and we'll keep going. Okay, so I'm going to show you how this works. It's basically 2 nuts. Sorry, it's kind of dark down here. Hang on a minute. Okay, so there's a nut and a screw on the bottom. And this one's, I guess it's kind of dirty. So I'm gonna unscrew this just so you can see how this works. So there's a ball and a joint. Goes together. This goes together. Do you see that's like a threaded thing? Screw on one side. I want to use this original one because it's a nice joint and it fits directly in my treadle. If you don't have this, you can just use a hose clamp or a piece of tie wire or part of a coat hanger, anything. So I'm going to put this back together. Okay, so I'm going to screw, I want the rod to be loose, and I'm going to screw this. Okay, so now it's kind of snug. It still wiggles. And I'm going to take this, I'm going to put it in there, and I'm going to put this nut on the bottom. This collar goes in that part of the treadle. Okay, so this is the part that comes with your motor. This holds your rods together. So I'm going to use half of the new one and half of the old one. Okay, so this has 2 ball joints, one on each end. One is supposed to go on your pedal and one is supposed to go on your motor. So I'm going to put one up in my machine, and then the other one, I'm going to join these together. This may not be long enough for me. I might have to improvise and use 3 parts, and then this will hold it together. So I'm going to have to figure out how to get this from down there up there. So the next step in your motor process is to install the connecting rod. This comes with your servo motor. It has both ends, one to go on your pedal and one to go on the motor. So this is the connecting rod. So I'm going to loosen this, take it apart, and then I'm going to put this end on the motor. So generally speaking, this goes up here to the motor and the other end goes down to your pedal. It doesn't matter if it's straight or crooked or forwards or backwards because it comes with a ball joint, so it moves around. It just needs to go up and down. So it has a the ball joint, a nut, a lock washer, and another nut. So I'm just going to connect it to my motor, and I prefer to put it in the furthest forward hole because that motor goes up and down. So the longer the arm of the lever, the more control you sort of have. And I'm looking at where my pedal is below. So I think I'm going to stick this on this side. And I'm keeping the lock washer on the part that's in there. Less likely to lose that if my bolt accidentally falls off. So I'm going to put my, if my nut accidentally falls off. Oh, see, like that. Where did that go? Okay, I found it. Gonna screw that on here. Okay, and then I don't want it too close to the ball side because I want that to be articulated. Then I'm just gonna tighten those two nuts together. Until I see the split in the lock washer. Sorry, I know the camera's moving. I need to put it on a separate mount. So I see it gets tight and I see the split and the lock washer has closed. We're done. Now I just need to connect this to my pedal. And so right now for me, I'm going to use the original part from down here. It's too short. It doesn't reach that. So I'm going to have to come up with some other way to connect these two. And the original pedal does have a nut on it. So I'm probably going to take advantage of that and splice in something, probably using the clamp they gave me. And maybe I'm going to chop a piece of this rod off or something and stick it in there. Okay, so got my rod. When you push down on the pedal, it starts your servo. So that's pretty much the motor install. And then I need to make a belt for here. I need to plug the motor in, and I need to set the speed and probably reverse the direction. But that's most of the motor install. Okay, just got to connect that rod down to something else. And if you have some other kind of pedal, you can use this other half of it. Okay. So I'm continuing on with my treadle setup, and on my existing chain stitch machine, I have the thread over on my right hand side towards the front where it's just easy to change with a couple screw eyes heading over to the tension discs. So I'm going to do the same thing on my new tabletop, and I'm going to show you what I'm doing. The treadle wheel was mounted in between these two things. So there's actually a hole here, so it's the perfect place to get started with your thread holder. So I have a little piece of threaded rod here. I have a washer, a slightly smaller washer, and a nut on this end of the threaded rod. And I screwed the threaded rod as far to the right as possible so there's nothing sticking out to catch or snag. And then on this side I have another large washer. Sorry, I don't know if you can see that. Another large washer, which actually there was an indent in the treadle wheel for the wheel hardware. So this washer fits perfectly. Smaller washer and a lock washer and a nut. So I've tightened those up so that takes me out horizontal. And then I'm using a piece of 12 gauge electrical wire, which I have put a loop in this end, and I've got a loop on this end. And I've got, again, a nut, a washer, pinching the copper wire in between another washer, lock washer, and nut. And so that's how I'm holding this. And then on this end here, I'm going to use a bolt. I got a lock washer, a bolt, a big washer. I'm going to put my round disc on top. You could use like a lid from a peanut jar or anything. And then I'm going to lock it down with this. So that's going to take my thread out to the front. And then I'll have to go up to the top and I'll have to put in a couple screw eyes to feed it over. Right now I have the post bed machine in here and the tension is in a different location. So I'm going to have to put a screw eye behind that tension disc, and then I'm going to have to put another screw eye over here for when I use a regular Cornelli machine. So I'll be back when I finish having the spray paint dry on my little wood part that goes on here for my thread to sit on. Okay, so I'm going to finish my thread stand now. This is a piece of just a piece of like MDF particle board that I cut out using a hole saw. So if you use a hole saw, it makes the hole in the center and cuts a circle. It's not the most beautiful, but it'll work. So I'm gonna take my bolt with lock washer, and I'm gonna put it up from below on my round thing. And I'm gonna put this down through the top. And then I'm gonna drop my washer on. And I'm gonna drop my nut. My spray paint is still pretty wet, so I know that that's gonna stick. I'm gonna tighten it up, and then I'm ready to go. I just need to install some screw eyes directly above and feeding to the machine.